This day in sports history. For fans of the red, white, and blue ball, the lawlessness of the Rebel League, and the electricity that guys like Julius Erving, David Thompson, George Gervin, and so many others displayed in the 9-year run of the ABA, this was a sad day. On this day in 1976, it was the final game ever played in league history. This was Game 6 of the best-of-7 series, with the New Jersey Nets up 3-2 over the Denver Nuggets. Dr. J had been nearly unstoppable in the series, averaging 38 points a game, and he was coming off a subpar 37-point outing in Game 5. He would wind up as the MVP of the playoffs to go along with his league MVP award, and at this point was considered to be the best basketball player on the planet. The game was played in the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island, and the full house of 15,934 were a bit dismayed in the third quarter, with their hometown Nets down 22 points with only 17 minutes of basketball left. The Nuggets had built their lead behind rookie high-wire act David Thompson.
Who would think at the beginning of the year that Marvin Webster and Monty Tao would be instrumental in the Denver Nuggets playoff surge? Webster. Oh, my goodness. Leaping David Thompson with 13 points.
He had his belly button on the rim that time. How did he get up? Whew.
Thompson finished the night with a game-high 42 points. Those watching live figured the series was headed back to the Mile High City for the decisive Game 7. But Nets coach Kevin Lockery dialed up the defensive pressure, forcing the Nuggets into turnover after turnover, and by the end of the third, the Nets had whittled down that lead to a 14-point deficit thanks to Julius Erving.
10 seconds on the 24. A feed into the doctor. Reverse. Oh, was that gorgeous?
But the doctor wasn't the only one making house calls on this night. His teammate John Williamson warmed up, and he started pouring in buckets.
They can put it to 5. Williamson finds the shot. Got it.
I tell you, John Williamson believes he can score off anybody.
96-89. Look at Julius. Williamson saves it. And he's fouled. Will it go? It goes! And he's fouled.
The Nets outscored Denver 34-14 in the final quarter to win by 6. Erving finished with 31 points, 19 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 4 blocks. Williamson had 28 points. With the upcoming merger, both the Nets and Nuggets would join the NBA the following year, along with the Indiana Pacers and the San Antonio Spurs. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 2005, we remember Tiger Woods for something he didn't do, rather than for something he did. The PGA Tour was in Irving, Texas for the Byron Nelson Classic. Tiger had played the first round decently, nothing crazy, but a 1 under 69 put him 6 shots off the pace set by Stuart Appleby. He didn't exactly blow up on Friday, but he just couldn't find the birdies he needed. The cut line was hovering around 140 when he walked up 18. He was on the number, and if he could make par on the final hole, well, he'd play the weekend. But he beat it around a bit and left himself a 15-footer for par. And that par putt slipped by, and he tapped in for bogey and a second-round 2-over par 72. It was the first cut Tiger missed in 7 years, going back to the 1998 AT&T Pebble Beach. A string of 142 consecutive cuts made, which is still the PGA Tour record. Of course, don't feel too bad for Tiger. He won the Masters and the British Open that year, finished second at the U.S. Open and fourth at the PGA Championship. Interestingly, though, he would actually miss a second cut later that year at the Funai Classic at Walt Disney World. Maybe golfer Bruce Crampton should have just not played golf on May 13th, or maybe the number 18 was his unlucky number. because he had not one but 2 meltdowns in different years at the same golf tournament. On this day in '62, Crampton stepped onto the 18th tee on Sunday as the leader of the Colonial National Invitational, needing only a par to secure the win. A bogey would be bad, but not catastrophic. He would still play in a playoff. But of course, he hit his approach into a lake and made double bogey, missing the playoff by 1 shot. He had done the same thing the day before as well. Arnold Palmer was the eventual winner of the tournament in the playoff the next day. The lake would soon be tabbed Crampton's Lake for his follies on successive days in '62, and then in '73, Crampton stepped onto the 18th hole tee box, needing only a par once again to win the Colonial. This time, he hooked his tee shot into a lateral water hazard, and then into a bunker, and he missed his bogey putt to gift Tom Weiskopf the 1-shot victory. And the next time you are on the struggle bus on the golf course, remember this story of the unfortunate French golfer Philippe Porquier, who on this day in 1978 at the French Open took 20 shots to finish the 511-yard par 5 13th hole at Le Bol. Apparently, there were some shankopotamus shots and a few lost balls along the way. In this one-hole adventure, he carded a 98 that day, which followed up the 82 that he had fired in the first round. Needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, he did not get to play the weekend. The 20 strokes is the most ever recorded on a hole during a European Tour event. On this day in 1973, it was the first Battle of the Sexes tennis match, or as it would soon be called, the Mother's Day Massacre. At this point in time, Bobby Riggs was a 55-year-old former men's tennis champion and a hustler. He won Wimbledon and the U.S. Open in 1939, becoming the world's top tennis player in the process. He won the U.S. Open again in '41 and climbed on top of the tennis world again in 1946 and '47. Now, he was never known as a power player. Instead, he was savvy, using ball control and change of speed on his shots. He was a tactical artisan on the court. He was also a gambler, a loudmouth, and, as I said, a hustler. Now in the early 70s, women's world number 1 Billie Jean King had been instrumental in establishing the first women's professional tour and started discussing equal pay for women in tennis. To which the outspoken Riggs infamously said, and I am quoting here, "A woman's place is in the kitchen and the bedroom, and not necessarily in that order," end quote, which quickly earned Riggs the title of male chauvinist pig. Riggs made an appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson after the Margaret Court match, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, and he kept digging his hole.
I like them real good in the bedroom, the kitchen, and when they bring you the slippers and the pipe. And, I really think...
You're a male chauvinist, eh?
I really think the best way to handle the women is to keep them pregnant and therefore... This way, they don't worry about getting out in the men's world and competing for jobs and trying to get equal money and all that baloney, and they stay in their place.
Yeah, a real peach of a guy. Part of it was to promote himself and the matches which were making him money. He was a provocateur, but let's be honest, he was also an asshole. Anyway, in '73, Riggs started talking about how the women's game was inferior and how he could beat the top women's players in the world, and he started pestering King for a match. But King was not interested in playing into Riggs's shenanigans, and so then he started pestering the world's number 2 player, and the woman considered to be the best women's tennis player of all time at that point, Margaret Court. Court was an Australian born 3 years after Riggs had won Wimbledon and the U.S. Open in 1939. She won the Women's Singles Grand Slam in 1970, meaning that she won all 4 major titles in the same year. By this time in '73, she had won 22 Singles Grand Slam titles, and she is still the only woman to ever complete 2 Grand Slam box sets, meaning that she won all the Grand Slam tournaments in singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. She did it once as an amateur and again as a professional. Court agreed to take on Riggs. She was apparently not on the front lines in the equal rights fight and was interested in the $10,000 winner's check. But Court was also not prepared for the pressure and the hype that Riggs would build for this match. So on this day in '73 in Ramona, California, Riggs and Court met on the tennis court. There were 3,500 in attendance, one of which was the actor John Wayne, who was there to present the check to the winner, and an estimated 10 million watching the match on CBS that night. It was Mother's Day, and prior to the match, Riggs patronizingly handed Court a Mother's Day bouquet of roses. It went south for Court in a hurry. She put less than half of her first serves in play and committed 10 unforced return errors. She was thrown off by Riggs's soft serves and array of junk shots, but they were well placed and kept Court off balance throughout. Riggs skated to a 3-love lead in the first, with Court winning only 4 points in that stretch. When Riggs served back-to-back aces to take a 4-1 lead in the second, Court was pretty much done. Riggs won in straight sets 6-2, 6-1. Court's reaction after the match would have had more sting had she won, but she said, "I didn't expect so many soft shots. We girls don't play like that." Riggs, of course, basked in his own glory and gloated, "Now I want King bad. I'll play her on clay, grass, wood, cement, marble, or roller skates. We gotta keep this sex thing going. I'm a women's specialist now. I'm going around the world to challenge all the women champions. England, France, Czechoslovakia, everywhere. Me against them. Battles of sexes. I found a whole different life." Soon after, Billie Jean King knew what she needed to do, and she finally accepted the offer from Riggs. The weight of women around the world rested on King's shoulders to shut Riggs up, and that match would take place 4 months later, on September 20th. And in 1983, football head coach Bud Grant was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Grant was honored for the time he spent with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers from 1957 through 1966. In his 10 seasons as coach of the Blue Bombers, Grant led the team to 6 Grey Cup appearances and 4 championships. He was the first coach to coach teams to both a Grey Cup and a Super Bowl. Marv Levy joined him on that short list later. Grant was also the first to be inducted into the American Football Hall of Fame and the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Levy and quarterback Warren Moon are the only other ones on that list. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. We've all been taught since we were kids that humans have 5 senses: sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. But scientists actually believe we have at least 21, or maybe even more senses.
Say what?
An example would be the sense of balance, or the ability to not only taste, but to taste sweet, sour, salty, umami, or bitter. So give yourself some more credit for being a sensitive person. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.